Okay, hello, you guys. Welcome to this week's episode of the Expand and Evolve podcast. I'm your host, Carly Pinchin, and I'm here with a guest, Danielle McCleerey. I'm
Hi.
so excited to have this conversation. We were DMing back and forth. I don't know what I posted. You wrote me a message kind of talking about how just things are going to get crazy and everyone's wounds are starting to get exposed, which is everything going on in like the cosmos.
Mhm.
And I was like, hold on, we need to record a podcast about this because I feel like you're just a wealth of knowledge in this space. And for those of you who are jumping on and you don't know who she is, she was actually, I met her through the network marketing space, and she's transitioned into being a business coach that pairs it with spirituality, human design, like all the stuff. I feel if business coaches utilize this, they would understand their clients so much better, because
Mhm.
you can't just apply any, like, you have to be a leader and you do 12, calls a day and you post to social media 4 times a day. Like, there is no method like that when everybody is an individual with different human designs, different backgrounds, different astrology. And so I'm just so excited for this conversation to just kind of talk through stuff that we haven't really talked through on this podcast before. So if you want to introduce yourself a little bit, just who you are, what you do, and then jump into kind of explaining further what we were DMing about.
Yeah. So, well, hi, I'm happy to be here. I've been loving your show. I was so
Aw.
excited when you launched. I was like waiting for the day you launched a podcast. I was like, she's going to launch a podcast and it's going to be so good. And she's going to just put her invitation out there and people are just going to listen and it's going to just take off like wildfire. And so it's really fun to see you have a show and I'm so grateful to be here. But anyway, yeah, I'm Danielle. I kind of call myself like your intersection between like the strategic shit and the healing our shit. Like that's like what I do. And I think more than anything, what I'm actually on this planet to do is help people just get to know themselves really, really well. And not from like yes, I know what I like. My favorite color is red. I mean, like, I know what my wounds are. I know where my shadows are. I know who I am. I know who I'm for. And I do that through neurolinguistics programming, human design, astrology, a lot of subconscious reprogramming, a lot of like feminine and wealth energetics work. But then usually that usually translates to helping people then build businesses, because when people find freedom in themselves, the last thing they want to do is work for anyone else. So it usually just marries really, really nicely. But yeah, I did build a business in the network marketing industry. I've since transitioned away, and now I run my own company, which
Mm-hmm.
is so crazy to say.
Mm-hmm.
And that's me. But let's
Okay.
talk about
Well, I want to jump. Let's just mention this quick because I think I still have a network marketing business, right? And I think what I always say with network marketing is it really is the blueprint on how to learn skills. If you
Totally.
came from nothing, you were an employee, network marketing can serve as the perfect introduction to business,
Yep.
because you have mentors and you have leaders and you're able to start learning the skills of putting yourself out there, what it feels like to be rejected, like putting out your offer, learning how to do sales, learning how to communicate with people, learning leadership skills. And so there's just so much value in building a network marketing business. And some people choose to stay in the space forever, and other people find that they feel a pull somewhere else. And I
Yeah,
think there's no issue either way. It's like whatever works for that person. And I
totally.
know for you, you came into conflict because for those people who aren't in network marketing and don't know this, you can't just be a business coach. And then also there's a conflict of interest, right? Because if you were going to charge all your people that you're coaching that should be free, hey, you're going
Right.
to pay me, like it can
Right.
be a conflict. And so with your genius and your skill set, it was like it made more sense for you to transition into what you're doing now. And I think that goes to show what you're teaching people is like when you do learn yourself and you start to understand yourself, you're going to go to what you feel pulled to, and you're always going to end up building a business. It's
Totally.
one of those areas of human mastery. Like when you master your health and your relationships and your finances, you're going to build a business in whatever your natural born skill set is, but you need to find you to find what that is. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
And honestly, the biggest thing was like, I love the network marketing industry. I coach a lot of the industry's leaders. Like, I
Yeah.
love this industry. But one of the things for me is I realized it was like my dad died 3.5 years ago. And it was right after that, I kind of like hit this wall and I realized like how out of like myself I was. And so I went on this journey of healing and really what it came down to was I needed to regulate my central nervous system. And so for me, a lot of the things that I realized I had to break up with were things that I never thought I would have to break up with. Like I had to leave the network marketing industry because like the industry for me, and this is not for everyone, but for me, it was perpetuating this wound that I had of like the addiction I had to praise and validation. And so it's the part of like manifestation, and it's the part of like finding yourself that nobody wants to talk about. Everyone wants to talk about like what you're calling in and all these beautiful things that you're going to get. And like, yeah, all of those things are coming, but in the way, it's like Sky Daddy, God, universe, source, whatever it is to you, is also going to give you everything that's in the way of that. And it's going to be really painful because a lot of the things that are in the way are things that you really love and never thought you'd have to release. And so for me, network marketing, I worked for Soul Cycle for a long time, which is an indoor cycling studio. A lot of those things were in the way of where I was headed and who I was becoming. And so having to release that was really painful, although necessary. It was painful. And I definitely had to like, it took a minute.
Well, and it's the courage to let go, because I think
Yes.
you can get stuck in a state where, and this is where, again, you have to really get to know yourself, because there could be someone listening who is like, oh, maybe this is my reason to let it go. And it's like, okay, but where are you running away from it from? And where are you wanting to let go of it from? Because
Totally.
sometimes you actually need to lean into the thing.
Yes.
And I've worked with people too, where I say, okay, you might hate your full-time job and you may know it's not for you, but right now you need to respect and honor where you are
Right.
until you've built something else, because you also don't want to just let everything go prematurely sometimes. And you're like, oh, now I'm actually screwed. Like, you have to be intentional and smart, and you were.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of people I see that are like, I'm building my own business, so I'm going to quit my job. I'm like, yeah, well, you want to know what the biggest source of stress is? It's financial stress. So like,
Yeah.
if there is something that you can do with your eyes closed and
Yeah.
like get a paycheck for while you build your thing, that's the biggest piece of leadership you could ever show yourself and the world, because then you're not stressed every day about the other shoe falling. Maybe you're going to give less energy to that thing. Maybe you're not going to try so hard to like get a raise or get promoted or like whatever. You're going to do your job, you're going to do it well, and you're going to do no more than that. And then all of that extra energy you're going to save, you're going to put towards your other thing. But yeah, I mean, I am such a proponent. I tell all my clients, I'm like, do not quit your job until like you
You're
can
right.
quit your
Yeah,
job.
exactly. Exactly.
Then
And
I
I
shouldn't be
think,
stressed.
no, exactly. And I think sometimes, because you see all this stuff online that's like, just be a business owner. It's like, yes, and you
Burn the
need to
boat.
yeah. And it's
But
like,
like I
and you
need
need
a
to be
boat to
responsible.
burn. Like
Yes.
I actually have to have a boat in order to be able to burn it. So like if I don't actually have a boat, then I'm burning nothing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, except all your money, and then you're going to be stressed. So
Then
it's
you're
like,
stressed.
don't do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um
because starting your own business, I mean, that's the other thing about network marketing. I'm like, network marketing is by and large even at the very top, like you are, like it is still by and large a lot less expensive than starting your own business from scratch. And so like if you're going to do
mhm.
that, definitely don't quit your job until you can.
Right. And it's like, one thing that I love for people who are trying to learn to get out of that employee mindset and learn the skills to be in business is, it kind of is like a baby step of it. Because I think when I first started my first business, it was full-time solo entrepreneurship. I was building a personal training and nutrition business.
Mm-hmm.
I had to invest in buying all the equipment to start the gym stuff. I had to invest in all the courses. I had to pay to do all the things. And I'm like, I think when you really start to factor in what it actually costs to start a business outside of network marketing can be like a cheaper option to kind of get
100%.
those skills going, and then build it, utilize the wealth and the income that you build from it. And then if you choose that this is no longer for you, that's okay. You built up the skill set and the money to be able to go do what you really want to do. And for others, it just makes sense to stay. And so that's
Yeah.
obviously everyone's individual journey. But
I mean, there was a time where I was teaching at Soul Cycle, which I was a master instructor. So I was making not the money I'm making now, but definitely I was
good
able to
money.
live.
Yeah.
And I was at the top of my network marketing company, which is the same one you're in. And like, then I also was building my business. So like there was a time where like it was like money was coming in from multiple sources, and it really took the pressure off of, because I think too, when you like go to build your own business, like people put a lot of pressure on themselves. It has to work because I have to make the money. And I'm like, that is such an energy of lack. That's such an energy of need. And the energy of lack and need is not equal or equivalent to abundance. It's the actual opposite of abundance. And then you just get so stuck in your masculine of like, must do, must perform, must achieve, must, that you can't even receive. You're like so far out of receivership that it's like you're repelling money.
Literally. And I think I saw some meme the other day. It was like, some of you are, I don't know, basically off, like you're putting out offers that because you need to pay your rent and it shows. And I was like, yeah, you never want to be, and this was me too. This is why I kept a part-time job while I built my first business, because I was like, I never want my clients to feel like I need them to pay my bills. I want my bills to be taken care of. And my clients are people that I can genuinely serve from my heart because I'm not needing the financial gain from them. And I think that that's so important. Why don't you jump into this? Abundance, lack, scarcity, all the things, what you were just saying in terms of money, because you have so much knowledge on this. And then jump into what you were telling me about just the shifts and things going on in the world right now and how everyone's wounds are just like being exposed and basically oozing out right now.
Yeah. Well, let's start there actually, because then we can like bring it back into like abundance and lack and scarcity. Because like what's happening in the cosmos, if we're like, this is why I'm like, you know, it's like use all of these things as a tool, right? Like whether you read the Bible, whether you study astrology, whether you study human design, like use it all as a tool, because like information is power and knowledge is power. And so for me, if I can like, if I like, the reason, I mean, I was actually an astrology girl when I was in high school. I was like the girl like slinging astrology readings like in between math and, you know, history.
I love it.
But then I got like deep into it and I started to pay attention to like not just people's charts, but like the actual like planets. And right now in this current climate, we have there's a couple of very big astrological events happening. One of them is that the sun is squaring Chiron. You do not have to know what any of this means. Very simply, the sun is our core self. So your sun sign, I'm a Sagittarius, Carly's a Taurus, whatever your sun sign is, a sun is your core self. It's just who you are at your core. Chiron is responsible for, it's the wounded healer. So it's all the wounds that you came here to heal in this life. And whether you believe in past lives, whatever, I do. I believe in all sorts of timelines, and the wounds that you came here to heal are your Chiron. So if those two planets are, or not, like if those two astrological events are squaring each other, they're opposing each other. So right now we have a lot of wounds that are very exposed. And if you think of like, if you cut yourself, like, let's say you like if I have a son, Carly's got boys, they skin their knees a lot. Yeah. If we skin the knee and we just keep pouring salt in the wound, like A, the wound's not going to heal, and B, it's going to hurt. And when something hurts, you're mad and you get angry. And so kind of what this transit does is it almost is like pouring salt into wounds and really just making them hurt. And so people get angry and they get testy and then they get like mad at each other. And then there's all this like divisiveness and this like, that's why you see people fighting online, and like obviously like Trump got shot and like all these things happening, and then there's all these opinions about it and everything just like flares up, which like actually this is like a totally other conversation for another podcast. But if you look at Trump's like astrology chart and like his transits, he had some crazy transits. He has crazy transits this whole year. And whether you like him or not, I mean, people who study astrology, and like we could really care less about either person, but from an astrological perspective, he's got so many crazy transits happening. Like literally two of his planets that are like responsible for war and violence were like conjunct each other on the day of his shoot. Like it's crazy. Like,
of course.
There's astrologers that had like predicted that something was going to happen that week, and it did. Like it was crazy. But anyway, that's another story. The other thing that's happening right now is Mars, which is the planet of like anger and violence and war. It is conjunct Uranus, which Uranus is the planet of like shock and surprise and like things happening. And those two are conjunct, AKA like opposite and like not together. They're opposing one another right now. So when that happens, shock can happen, anger can happen. You pair that with wounds being exposed, right? And then we also have a full moon in Capricorn,
Yeah, Sunday.
that's like right now. And anytime there's a full moon, anytime any of these transits happen, you're going to feel them like a week before and a few weeks after. Like the energy of it can linger. So like
Mhm.
right now we have all of these three things. So although yes, there's a lot of very like tumultuous, volatile, kind of like angsty energy, and you can see this online, you can see this in the way that people interact in the comments of like social
Yep.
media. You can see it in the way that the media is like putting out news. Like you'll just know when things are inflamed and angry. And so although yes, that's true, a lot of wounds are coming to the surface and you're really like having to face the parts of yourself that you don't really like right now. It's also a really great time for healing because Capricorn is
Mhm.
like the legacy sign. It's the sign of legacy. It's the sign of hard work. It's the sign of kind of like healing a lot of shit that you don't need anymore. And so well, yes, it is a weird time and energy is on a whole other level. It's also what's coming is going. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of opportunity to release a lot of these wounds that maybe you've been able to like. It's like if you hurt yourself and then you're like, no, it's fine. It doesn't hurt. And it's like very much there in the background. But like if it doesn't hurt a lot, then you can kind of ignore it until it's a huge
Mhm.
problem. Like toothaches are usually this. Like if you have like a cavity, like you can ignore it for a really long time until you can't. We're just at that point where we can't ignore it anymore. So like we have to go to the dentist and get it fixed. And so
Mhm.
it's a really beautiful time to kind of heal some of these feelings around like scarcity, lack. What did you say? Like the masculine and the feminine energy.
Yeah, it's the fear, it's the scarcity, it's the lack, it's the not enoughness. It's
Mm-hmm.
like so much, and I feel like I'm seeing this in people lately. And you're right. Like if you pay attention to the comments, people are so uppity and triggered, and obviously this can happen all the time on social media, but I'm noticing it more. Like even
Mm-hmm.
in people's stories, they're it's very much like clap back. Like everyone is clapping back and like nah, 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 nah.
Yep.
And I'm like, this is so interesting because I normally don't notice this stuff going on
Yep.
as much.
Yep.
Um, and even in personal relationships I have with friends and people and the things that are happening in their lives right now, a lot of shit shows and like blow ups are happening. And I think it's because, like you just said, like things are having to come to the surface. They've already been there. They've been there maybe the last year or 2 years. And now it's like, okay, we're going to just like bring this all up now so that you have to actually look at it, face it, and then be able to move forward. And
Right.
I think that's what they were saying this moon is on the 21st is um July for people that are listening. But it was saying that all the stuff that's been kind of circulating and coming up, it's time to like now you've had all this awareness, you've brought it to the surface, and you're
Mhm.
actually able to kind of like cultivate and move forward from it all. If
Well,
you're
also
willing
just
to look
embody
at
it
it. Yeah.
because everybody knows it. We can know, everyone knows a lot of things. We all know a lot. Everyone knows, I know what I need to do. Everyone knows what they need to do. We're all pretty smart. But knowing versus the embodying of it, that
Mm,
truly is the difference. And I think, yeah, with any full moon, but especially a full moon in Capricorn. And this year we have two full moons in Capricorn. So it's like double the fun to
mhm.
really finally get rid of anything that's not serving you. And like it's in Cancer season, and Cancer is, when I think of Cancer in the zodiac, I think of Cancer as like Mama Willow. Like she's the elder, she is the intuitive conduit of the zodiac who can just like, it's like in Avatar, that movie Avatar, it's
Yeah.
Awa. Like she's Awa. And
Mhm.
so if you're going to connect to that kind of consciousness, which we are all moving towards that paradigm, right? Like
Yeah.
that's happening whether you believe in it or not. Like we are like
Mhm.
the consciousness is expanding. You have a choice at how fast you're going to get there. Like it's going to happen regardless, but you can either like go kicking and screaming, or you can go, you know what? Yeah, this
I'm
like
gonna lean
this
in.
weird feeling I have about putting myself out there because I'm afraid of like being disagreed with, or when I am disagreed with, I make it mean something about me to the point where I fight. I spend so much of my energy fighting in the DMs or fighting in the comments with people instead of just focusing on all of the people that are there for my message or all of the people that are there for what I have to say. If I can truly release that and I can start to actually, what it comes down to is release the need to be needed,
Mm,
and like just detach from it.
yeah.
Well, then I can actually focus on where I'm going and I can focus on why I'm here, and I can really start to put my magic out into the world in a
Mm,
really big way, which is what we're all being called to do right now. And everyone's magic is a little bit different. It wouldn't work if we were all here to do the same thing, right? Like
right.
I'm not here. Like I was asked a question a couple weeks ago in one of my container. I run a program called Break the Matrix, It's literally like everything we're talking about.
Yeah.
But
Love.
one of the questions I got was like, I don't see you talk about politics that much. I don't see you talk about like everything that's happening in Gaza and Israel. And I'm like, listen, it's not that I don't have opinions. It's that my magic is helping people reconnect to themselves. And as a very influential person who people do want to like cling to my words, it does not serve the collective the way that I want it to serve the collective by just trying to get everybody to believe what I believe. I want people to really, really get to know themselves, because when you know yourself, you win. Like, if
Well,
you
and
could
you form your
really,
own opinions. Like you
yes,
won't need to know what you're thinking about the situation because you'll know what you feel about the
right.
situation.
And then you won't need other people to validate you, because
Correct.
anybody that needs to be like validated, and I mean, I'm sure you guys see this in Canada a lot. I mean, it's so prevalent in America where like, and I mean, as somebody in the LGBT community, that I can talk shit about the LGBT community all I want. Like,
Yeah.
it's one of those things where it's like this community is the biggest community that has so much trauma, which like, obviously there's trauma because there's usually religious trauma around like being able to
Yeah.
be themselves. And so a lot of the
And
LGBT community
acceptance.
needs so badly for everyone else to like put a pride flag up or to validate their experience. And it's like when you can actually just become so confident in yourself, you don't need it's like, I don't need other people to put up a Christmas tree at Christmas in order for me to celebrate Christmas. And it really comes down to the same thing. And I think the more that you can really get to know yourself and tap into your footing, the less validation you need externally. Which, can you imagine if everybody on the planet like just was so committed and connected
Yes.
to their mission?
It'd
They'll
be
never let that happen.
no.
Whoever they
They
are, they'll never let that
this
happen.
we
But
can move towards matrix stuff. This is fun. But I was just thinking about this with when you mentioned the all the letters LGBTQ plus whatever.
the alphabet mafia.
The alphabet mafia. Yeah, yeah. No, but it's so true because it's like they want to be seen as like, it's okay, right? Like the way I am is okay, right? And I need you to show me that you're okay with it, because they're not even fully secure and okay with it with themselves.
Right.
Because you're right. Like you're like, no, I'm married to a woman. I'm fully okay with everything within me. So I don't need you to reaffirm to me that it's okay with my choices.
No.
But when you are needing external validation to tell you that your choices are okay, you're seeking that. And
And
it's
then
the same thing with politics that's happening right now. You want to know like what I believe is okay, right? And so you're seeking out all these other people to affirm what you believe rather than just having a knowing and a truth within you that like, yeah, this is me because I know
this is
me.
me. And it doesn't matter if you don't agree. And it doesn't matter if like we don't see eye to eye on
Yeah.
this, because like in America, that's what we were
They
founded on
want.
anyway, is the ability to disagree. And B, like you don't, then what happens is you stop waking up every day with this like armor on, this like,
Mhm.
I remember when I moved to Texas, like we moved to Texas like 3 years ago,
Yeah.
and moved from Los Angeles, and everybody was like, aren't you scared to move to Texas? And I'm like, well, no, because like A, my sexuality is the least interesting thing about me, but like B, like I don't wake up every day. And I feel like this is a thing with women. Like for women wake up, there's a lot of women that wake up every day and be like, I have it harder because I'm a woman. Or like, and I'm not saying that there aren't very real paradigms that are
Yeah.
trying to keep women small. Like there are. That's a very real paradigm that exists. But
Yeah.
like that's a paradigm that we created, which
Mhm.
means that that's a paradigm that we can shift. But if you wake up every day with this belief that
Mhm.
everyone hates you, that you're oppressed, that like life sucks. And I'm also not taking away from very real trauma, right? Like if
Yeah.
your generational lineage is Jewish, that's a generational pattern of, if I'm myself, I die. So like there's
Yeah.
some deep trauma there that needs to be healed. And yes, you might have a steeper hill to climb, but like that doesn't mean that you can't climb it. It just means that maybe you're going to have to like pack extra food to get to the top of that mountain, but like it's still possible. And I just don't wake up every day thinking like, oh gosh, like is somebody going to like care that I have a wife? Is somebody going to care that I'm like a woman? I don't think that. I wake up every day being like, I'm so awesome. And like anybody who gets to like hang out
Hang
with
on.
me today is so lucky.
Yeah. But it's true because think of how many people are finding their importance through their victim story.
Yes.
Like that's
Married to
how
it.
they feel important. That's how they feel like they're somebody because they're like, well, I'm a Democrat and this is happening in the world. So like, that's my identity. And I'm waking up today and it's hard because I'm a woman. I'm waking up today and I'm not this colored skin. So it's harder for me. And I'm a lesbian. So it's harder for like, you're choosing to identify with all of these things that are making your life harder rather than just being like, that's not all of those things that breed separation are not the important things about you at
Well, and you're
all.
giving your power away. Like you're just
Yeah.
giving your power away to that title, to that identification. Cause it's like, if I woke up every day and I was like, everything's going to be harder for me because I'm married to a woman, then like, then what I'm saying is everything that I do that is awesome is in spite of that. And everything that I don't do is because of that. So it's like none of that actually then is my own. Like none of it is my own power. None of it is my own abundance, my own knowledge, my own healing. It's all outsourced. And people do this with money, right?
Yeah.
Well, like if I can sell my offer, then I know that it's good. And it's like, you're out. It's the same way that people outsource their power in politics, the same way people outsource their power in their religion, in their sexuality, in their gender, in their like anything, right? Like it's people do it with money. And then it's your entire, whether you're abundant or not, is completely hung around if people buy this. And it's not the money that people like. What I wish people would understand about money is like money is not, it's not money that you want. It's actually not money. It's the way that money makes you feel. And you can actually just feel that in your, like money makes me feel free. Money makes me feel peace. Money makes me feel happy. But like where else in my life am I happy? And do I feel free? And do I feel peace? Because if I can actually just anchor that into myself and anchor back into my own body, then I become a bigger conduit for that feeling, which comes through money.
Right. Okay. Why don't we talk about that? Because abundance, it's so true. If you're like, okay, well, the only way I can make money is by doing this thing, and you're attaching it to some external outcome, like you said, where now you've made it about you. You're like, but if I'm not selling, my offer sucks and it's not good enough and I'm not successful. You're
Right.
giving it meaning rather than being the state of what you want to attract, which I believe so clear. Like you have to believe your offer is the best. Like how you wake up, you're like, I'm awesome. I'm amazing. You have to wake up and believe that about you.
Mm-hmm.
And then because you believe that thing, it just happens. The sales will just happen. Or, you will grow and you'll have money just come to you. And even today, it was funny. I looked through the mail and I'm like, oh, nice, another check. I don't even know who this company is, but I'm getting paid back some money. And I'm like, and this will happen to me randomly. And they always say this in all the money books. They're like, as soon as you believe that you're abundant and you're deserving of money, randomly money will just show up for you.
Yep.
And it just does. And it's almost as like a little like sprinkle to let you know, like, hey, you're on the right track. Like you're staying in that state.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you want to talk about this, but just the energetics and the currency, that money is just a currency of energy, really. And I saw some comparison that money's really water, and that's why we have water, because it's always moving and flowing. And if you're stuck tight, stagnant, and you're like that in every area of your life, how could you be abundant and flowing and moving?
Right.
You can't. And so it's like, where can you get less stuck, stagnant, and like rigid? And I feel like you're going to have more money flow to you. And like you said, you're not chasing money. It's what you've given the meaning to what money is going to give you, which is often the happiness, the freedom, the whatever,
Peace.
like nice things. You can want nice things. And I don't know if we want to talk about this and go into human design too, but for me being a Taurus, like part of my life is I like nice, pretty things. Okay. So rather than shaming myself for like, oh, but if I'm spiritual and oh, like, do I really need it? And and it's like, no, I just like nice things, not out of an ego place, not out of a show off place. I like things to look nice. It's nothing to be ashamed of. So what's money going to give me? The ability to have nice things.
Yeah.
That's great. But that's not the sole purpose of me having money.
Well, right. And that's, I mean, like, I like that you said, like, we can talk about human design because like, actually the way that because a lot of people then go, okay, well then like, how do I do that? And I'm like, get to know your human design, get to know your astrology, because like the way that Carly and I operate in terms of like how we work, how we show up, how we lead, how we make money is very different. And like, Carly's a Taurus. She's a projector. Projectors wait for the invitation. And like a lot of projectors will come to me and they're like, well, I don't understand. So I just sit back and do nothing. It's like, no, you set up your life in a way where you know that you are the shit. You know that everything you do turns to gold. You are so confident in what you have to say. You're so confident in what you do. And then people are going to go, I would like to know how you do that. And like, that's how a projector, like the more a projector can like recognize and validate themselves, the more they're going to be validated by the world around them. And then they won't even need that validation for the world around them, but it'll come anyway. And it's like, they will just have this overflow of confirmation that they're on the right path. A Taurus, there's no one, and a projector, there's no one more rooted for success than a projector. It's literally your alignment sign is success. And so if you're
And
like,
what happens when I'm not? This is just for fun for people. And this is where when you get to know your human design, it's so beneficial because I think it's bitterness, right? Like, or I feel like, and so I'm like, I naturally need to be in a feeling of success. Again, not out of like, oh, I have my worth in success. No, I just am, that's my life path, my human design. Like when I'm having success, I feel ease and flow. When I don't have success, it's almost like I'm abandoning myself.
Right.
And so I start to feel bitter.
Right.
And then what does that do? That's not going to bring success to you. And so it's like always staying on track that I need to feel that in order to feel aligned and fulfilled within me. And again, your human design can be totally different. And that's where you've got to get to know that.
Well, you have, you have to get to know yourself in that way because like you just said, and success. So if you're a projector, we as humans have attached money to the word success, but actually success can be like, I know Carly, if you listen to the show, you know Carly, like Carly goes to conferences where she learns how to breathe. She goes to conferences where she learns how to tap into her feminine energy. She's cried a lot. She's released a lot of wounds. She's gone through a breakup. Like there's so many things that you've done that have moved the needle closer to the feeling of success. And you've eliminated everything from your life that feels bitter. And that's like a lot of that has nothing to do with money. It has to do with the way that you show up for your kids. It has to do with the way that you like, you know, your morning routine and like what you like to eat and how you want your hair to look. And like you said, the nice things that you buy, like it's all of that where like, I'm a generator. I'm a sacral generator. So like everything that I do has to make me happy. Like that's it. And I'm a Sagittarius. So here's what's really crazy when you know your astrology. I'm a stellium Sagittarius. I have 6 planets in Sagittarius, all in my second house of astrology. The second house of astrology is wealth and finance. So like my sun, my moon, my Mercury, which is like how I communicate, my moon, which is my emotions, my sun, which is my core self, my Uranus, like, which is like shocking and like surprising things, all in Sagittarius in the house of money. So I'm like, when people go, you're so good at making money. I'm like, yes, I am very good at making money, but I wasn't because there's a shadow to everything. And when I was living, because for a generator, it's satisfaction. And the opposite of that is frustration. When I was living in a frustrated state, I was repelling the one thing that I was meant to attract in the easiest, most satisfying, joyful way. And then when I finally was like, okay, I'm going to surrender, which really meant surrendering back into like feminine energy, essentially what it came back to. When I finally stopped trying to do my feminine and actually just receive in my feminine, then I was like, oh, this doesn't bring me joy anymore. So I'm going to stop doing it. Oh, this makes me frustrated. Cut it out. And when I literally became unavailable for anything that was not mutually beneficial, which meant saying no, which meant closing doors that I never thought I would close, which meant leaving friendships that I never thought I'd have to leave. So it wasn't always joyful in the moment. But the bigger context was, is this moving me closer or farther away from the peace and freedom that I require in my life? Like, that's it. And when you can really start to do that and it becomes this like very satisfying, easy thing, whether you're a generator or a manifesting generator or a projector or a manifester, if you can follow your type and you can follow your authority and be unavailable for anything else, then this abundance that we've been talking about, then this ability to circulate money becomes very easy. And it doesn't feel hard anymore because you're unavailable for hard. Because I can promise you, out of any of the 5 human designs, hard is not anyone's alignment sign.
Right. And I think, but you did just say this where it's like, no, it's not. But some things are going to feel hard as you transition out of them. So the same thing
100%.
where, for example, how she just mentioned, I've cried a lot. I've gone to a lot of retreats. These things are not comfortable for me. Like I'm going to another one next week and I'm like, oh God, here we go again.
They're ugly.
I love it. It feels good after, but the exercises I have to do, the breath work, none of that is fun. It feels good after. It's kind of like working out where you're like, you don't really want to go, but then you do it and you're like, oh, I feel way better. Leaving a relationship, not fun. But I had to, for the alignment of me and my like bigger purpose, bigger picture. And the
Yeah.
same thing for you when you have to go through that really uncomfortable part of like, wow, okay, this friendship doesn't serve me, this job, this thing, this business. Like making those transitions will feel hard, but they're just more challenging because we're not used to that. And
Right.
also picking ourselves and letting other people down, really hard. No one taught us how to do that. Most people were not raised knowing how to let people down and choose themselves. It's usually make your mommy and daddy happy and make sure you do these things because it's going to make everyone else's lives comfortable and easier. And so as adults, learning to do this for our first times is hard, but it's like you feel so much freedom, and ultimately that's abundance too. It's like it's feeling free to have choice and feeling aligned in you, and that's where it all comes back to learning yourself, which is not done just through learning your human design chart, but that's a portion. Like for me, when I first learned my human design and she did a reading, I went, oh my gosh, it gave me permission to be exactly as I am and who I am and stop listening to what everyone else is doing and thinking like maybe I'd have more success if I did those things. But all of those things didn't work for me. So an
Right.
example of this is a projector. And you can even talk about this, just what you've seen for like basics of work for people.
Mm-hmm.
But people would ask me, how have you been so successful? How do you do what you do? And I go, I don't know. I just like manifest it. And it was annoying. But at the same time, I'm like, my superpower is I think about it. I really think about it and align with it. It has to be something I truly believe. And then by doing that, it kind of just happens, but it's because my actions are aligned with the thing that I want.
Yep.
And I can't work for 20 hours a day and like grind, like even a morning routine for me, having to repetitively do the same thing every day because I should and I'm supposed to, doesn't work for me. Where
Right.
somebody else could need to do the morning routine and follow that and follow the daily methods and tasks and things like that.
Yep.
For me, that is repels
Mhm.
everything away from me. I hate being told what to do. I hate feeling like I have to do something. I need to
More
just,
passive.
yeah, I need to
To be more
flow with what
passive.
feels good.
Yeah.
And I don't know, my kid just jumped in here. I'm going to ask him what he wants. But like, if you want to jump into what you've seen, even in general, high level, like differences, maybe even between a projector versus what you are, and how our work and the way we operate best is going to be different versus
Yeah.
the person who can have 10 businesses on the go. Is that a
Yeah.
manifesting generator where like they do great with 10 things?
Yeah. They're
Yeah,
literally, they're the definition of a multi-passionate.
correct. Where for me, if I try to do that, I have
No,
to wait
projector
for
needs a
inspiration to
nap or
hit.
a snack.
Correct. I'm like, I need to wait for the inspo to hit and then I run with the one thing
Yep.
because I have to be laser focused or
Yep.
else nothing works for me. And anyways, go ahead. Jump
Yeah.
into that.
So, well, it's interesting because like one of the you just kind of said like how human design gets to be a tool and how astrology gets to be a tool. One of the beautiful things about that is like I'll show you exactly how like learning about your human design and learning about your astrology can directly then correlate to like the work you do with your subconscious mind. So projectors as children, you very like your natural state of existing was like I and my son's a projector. So like he's a projector in a family of generators. So it's really fun to be raising an ego projector. Like his intuition is in his ego. Like he has to literally just do what he wants. Like that's Owen. And it's a lot of projectors as children, you're called lazy, you're called like bossy, you're called a know-it-all. And like, by the way, y'all, projectors do know it all. Like it's just who they are. Like they really do know it all. And so if you're as a kid, you're very much instinctively being like, we don't actually have to work this hard to like get what we want. And like, I don't know why everybody's like trying to be so busy all the time. But then you have the entire world around you being like, no, that's not right. You have to work really hard to get what you want. Then you're from a very young age, you're learning, you're being taught to not trust your intuition. You're being taught to not trust like your own knowing and your own truth. And so then you spend your whole life trying to prove to yourself, prove to everybody around you that you can be what they need you to be. And then no wonder projectors end up being adults, like saying yes to everyone, like trying to work a million hours a day, burning out all the time, being bitter about everything. And it's like, but what you've done is you've taught your subconscious brain to react to stress, to to be hyper vigilant in a state of high stress, high cortisol, high tension. And every time you go, which is kind of what we were talking about, like when you start to do this work, it is going to feel really difficult. It is going to feel really hard because your body is physically addicted to the chemical rush you're getting every time you say no, every time you feel scared, every time you feel guilt, every time you feel fear. Your brain is releasing literally cortisol and dopamine into your bloodstream that's actually preparing you to run from a tiger, which like you don't always need to run from a tiger, but like that's what your body thinks you're doing. And so it makes sense that when you're going to heal some of these things and you're going to set boundaries and you're going to learn to say no and you're going to like break up with things that are no longer serving you, no wonder your body's like, okay, great. I understand on a conscious level, you're very ready to release this, but like, I am actually very addicted to the feeling you get when you don't do that. So like, we're just going to stay here. And once you have awareness of this, this is where neural linguistics programming comes in. This is where quantum physics comes in. This is where all of these tools get to start to work together. I think human design and astrology, which this is how I teach it in Break the Matrix, it's literally the maps. Like these are the maps to help you understand your past a little bit more. So like as a generator, I've been praised my whole life for my yes. My whole life I've been praised for my yes. Oh my gosh, I don't know how you do it all. I don't know how you're so this. I don't know how you're so busy all the time, but you just figure it out. Like, and I just learned at a very young age that the way that I get love, the way that I get appreciation is by saying yes. So then now I'm a 33-year-old who just lost my dad, the one person in my life that always nurtured me, that always cared for me. And he's now gone. And I'm realizing like, oh my gosh, everything pretty much that I'm saying yes to right now, I don't want to be saying yes to. But my body is so addicted to the feeling I get when I say yes. And for me, this is like when I say I had to release things, this was network marketing for me. Cause like my network marketing journey was like very quickly, I was put on a pedestal. I was praised by everyone and my ego loved that. So when I decided like, no, I don't want to feel like this anymore. And I want to calm my central nervous system and I want to stop having such a high cortisol and adrenaline rush all the time. I had to take a look at all of these things that were contributing to that. And it's like, it is all connected. And so regardless of whether you're a projector, whether you're a manifester, as a manifester, you were always praised for your ability to lead and your ability to be in charge. So then now you're like an adult and you think you need to like be in charge all the time, but like, you're not meant to be in charge all the time as a manifester. You're meant to come in with a very innovative solution to very complicated problems, fix shit, and then go. Actually, you're Stephanie Ray. We both know her. Like she is a manifester. And like I've done a reading with her and this is something that we talked about. I'm like, you don't have to be in charge of everyone all the time. And so learning to kind of see where these programming and where these patterns and loops have come up for yourself can all very much be done through human design. And then you can use all these other tools you have, therapy, NLP, whatever, feminine energetics to kind of release them from your body. Somatic practices. I mean,
Yes.
everyone needs to be doing somatic stuff.
Well, because exactly that, when you're talking about this and how we were raised, right? And you think, okay, well, think of our parents. They were all told like you work 9 to 5 and you work really hard and you work and you go and then you go to school because it's the only way to be successful and not be like us. You had to go to school and you had to get educated. And we've all kind of grown up in that phase if you're within our generations, right? Like, millennials, whatever, between 20 and 50, like that's kind of how we were raised. And so it's like the somatic, the reason that that's so important and why I tell people all the time, like do the breath work, go to the things, like you have to do the somatic stuff because your mind can, like you were saying, you can know stuff, you can know it, you've heard it and you're like, oh cool. Yeah. I'm not supposed to do that. But in your body, you're like, it's been wired. You're like you said with your nervous system, you're literally hardwired to operate in that way until you go in the body and start creating safety to let that stuff go. And so mentally could be the first step, knowing it, hearing it, and then really being able to like embody it, like you were saying earlier, is your body. And so it's removing that stuff and letting it go. And that can feel scary and hard, but that's where you work with practitioners that can help you with the body stuff. Because, and I've always had this feeling, and I don't know if you want to talk more about your program with Breaking the Matrix, but I'm like, I really feel that talk therapy is part of that program because all you're doing is like you're just repeating a loop constantly. So it's like if all you've done for the last 5 years, like I go to therapy every week and like I'm still the same. Yeah, of course you're still the same. You're re-talking the same program and you're actually affirming it into you to even deeper as a deeper core belief. So if you want your life to shift, you have to do more than the talk therapy. Talk therapy could be a great intro. If
Yeah.
you've never done personal growth, you've never talked to anyone, you don't know how to communicate or
Yep.
like even start to unravel feelings, that could be a really great baby step.
Yeah.
But it calls for graduation. Like, I'm like, that's great if you think of yourself as a 5-year-old, but
Right.
now we're going to move to the deeper steps that are actually going to shapeshift you.
Right.
And talk therapy is not going to be it.
Oh my
I
gosh,
just,
I say that all the time. I'm like,
yeah.
I'll have clients that come to me and they'll do like I have a couple clients in Break the Matrix right now. They're like, I have been working on this in therapy for 15 years, and I'm like, PSA, if you've been working on anything for 15 years and nothing's moved, you have been ripped off, and you need to go get a refund immediately, because like that's not okay. Like
Yeah.
it's I agree with you. I think talk therapy is a really great place to start for anybody who's never even, if you've never even given yourself permission to admit that there is trauma, go to talk therapy, because it's going to get you so comfortable talking about it, because awareness is the first step. If you're not
Yeah.
aware, you can't heal what you're not aware of. But like once you're aware of it, if now we're not doing anything to like release it. So like
Mhm.
that's, yeah, I mean, to talk about like how what we do in Break the Matrix, it's literally like it's split into 4 pillars. The first pillar is the past, the second pillar is the maps, the third pillar is the vehicles, and then the fourth pillar is the future. And so we start with the past. It's essentially talk therapy. Like it's essentially like we're identifying the wounds, we're identifying the patterns, we're identifying like the relationships that we've had that we thought were great, but like maybe we're realizing that like there was some shit there that we never addressed. Great, we know that now. Now we're going to look at our maps, we're going to look at our astrology, we're going to look at our human design, which is going to help us read it better. And the reason I did it like that is because a lot of people will start with human design, and then they like open up all these can of worms, but then they don't know what to do with it. Where it's almost like if we open up the can of worms and then we go to human design and we go, well, no wonder you've always felt the need to over hustle. Like you're a projector who grew up with MG parents who just like go, 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 go. And like now you're all messed up. And they're like, oh, I understand. Like it's easier to kind of like draw that connection. And then we go into the vehicles, which is literally the somatic stuff. So like I'm an NLP and like somatic healer. Like I've done both of those certifications and I just like never get to use them. So that's why I was like, I'm going to like use them for once. And
Yeah.
so we do breath work. I teach like shaking. I teach EMT. I teach
Yeah.
all of these different modalities, which like depending on your human design too, like if you have an undefined root in your human design chart, which is the bottom center, you need a daily grounding practice. Like without fail, at the same time every day, you need to be going outside and standing in the grass barefoot. Like that, you need that because you need to find the earth again. Whereas I have an undefined head. My head is undefined. So I overthink. I
Yeah.
overthink everything. And also in human design, my conscious sun, which is considered your greatest gift, is the gate of ideas and the gate of prophecy. Like I'm literally here to like give ideas, but the shadow of that, because the law of polarity states that there's a shadow to everything. The shadow of that is that I overthink. So I have to have a daily meditation practice. And for me, just sitting there and like meditating isn't my vibe. So breath work is what I do because it gets me back into my body. But it's like if we're not doing these things, like you said, to release, it's like, like a rice cooker, like when you cook rice, if all you're doing is cooking rice and you never let the steam out, that thing is going to explode, right? And that's our bodies. So if we're knowing all this stuff and we're doing all this work and it's all coming in and we're so conscious of it, but then we're just letting it like build up with like nowhere to go, then all of a sudden you're going to explode and probably end up back where you started. And so doing some of these practices, this somatic stuff to actually work it through the body, well, then you can kind of come back to a neutral baseline, which is how you were always meant to exist. And then the fourth pillar, we move into the future. If you're a blank canvas and now you can paint, what are we painting? What are we doing? Where are we going from here? So, yeah, I mean, it's everything you're talking about, but by doing all this work, you come out of this constant state of lack and need, which is driven by high cortisol levels, which is driven by fear, which is driven by guilt. And you can actually come back into this more feminine state of being, which is a state of receivership, which is how we're meant to exist. Like she's meant to lead, but she can't lead if we don't have masculine structure and strategy, of course. But you have to find that harmony between the two. Otherwise you're just stuck in this like hyper vigilant state, which is not good for you.
Right. And I think this is where I feel like again, your maps that you're talking about, the human design, the astrology is so key, because when you take in information on Instagram, let's say, and someone could be talking about masculine and feminine energetics or business or whatever, but it's like, if they're a completely different sign and thing than you, their perspective and the way they see things could be totally different. And now
Yeah.
you're trying to pull that and apply it to you. And it could be totally wrong for you. Like you were
Right.
just saying, for someone, they could need to meditate for an hour a day, truly just sit there and meditate. For you, it's like, and for me too, that is not, doesn't work for me. For
Mm-hmm.
me to feel like I'm in a meditative state, I'm so much better off doing yoga and then
Yep.
laying at the end, or like doing a breath work and then laying at the end.
Yep.
Those things will pull me into meditative states, or
Yep.
even driving with nothing else.
Driving.
Like for me, that can pull me into a meditative state. If I try to just sit there, no, like
I'm
it's
overthinking.
not working. It's
Yeah.
not going to work for me. And so this is where, again, like be really mindful not to, this person said I need to meditate and do this and ground for 20 minutes and da-da-da-da-da. Like that may not be your thing. So
Mm-mm.
really understanding you personally, and then you have to kind of play to figure out what works best for you.
Yeah.
You said something else and I want to touch on it. And then this kid just keeps jumping around. He's like listening to you speak. It's kind of funny. I'm like, it's kind of
My
cool
son
as
came
your
in too,
kids
and I
get
was like,
older, right?
I
I'm
do
like,
this
it's,
for my son when he walks in the
yeah, I'm
door. I
like,
like put my finger out, and I'm like, no.
I know. And I'm like, just hold on. But it is cool because I'm like, even watching him, and I don't know if you want to speak to this because your son is so fascinating too, I feel like, with everything he came to you in this world. But like with our kids, if you understand human design too, you can parent your kids different. Like you can understand and honor their makeup, that it's not going to be like you.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my kids is, I think Dax is the manifestor and the other one's the manifesting generator. He's crazy to me because I can only do like exert energy for 2 hours a day, and he's ready to exert it for 100 hours a day.
Right.
But it's like, I don't make him feel bad for that. I know that that's just him, and he
Mm-hmm.
wants to be in a million directions. And so you can honor that and encourage it because that's their makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like applying that and understanding it for your parenting. And then also I would just say, like, for everybody listening, like when you learn this stuff, especially if you're a parent, you're able to better support your kids in such a beautiful way, because we're not doing what our parents did. We're like, they were doing their best, but they were imposing what they had been told was the best for us. And now we're kind of having to unravel that. And it's like, when you do this work for you, you get to just support your kids from being a kid
Right.
in their aligned state of being, which I
Yeah.
think is so
Well,
special.
and
Oh,
all
another
of
thing,
our,
wait, how you mentioned your dad passed away. And I don't know if you want to jump into this, but like I watched you kind of get initiated through the pain into what you were doing right now. And this is something where if you lose a loved one, I'm noticing this so much more.
mm-hmm.
Oftentimes someone loses their mom or their dad or both or whatever. And I'm almost feeling, and I don't know if you know this, but like we choose this in our life path, and it's kind of like past lives, this life, whatever. They're almost like our initiators a
Yeah.
lot of the time. And so if we weren't so afraid of the death and we understood like it's going to come, but it's going to initiate you,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of part of your path, like, I don't know, we could have such a different relationship with death. So
Well, I think
yeah.
the best thing that I learned about death, and like the biggest like aha that I came to, was I'm like, I've always been kind of like a medium in a way. Like I have like a very open channel, and I get downloads all the time about people, about me, about life, about everything. And a lot of this, if you have gate 12 in human design, or if you have a defined spleen in human design, you have a lot of like spiritual gifts. And so I was like having this download because I was feeling really sad, and I was like, I've been doing a lot of work of like uncovering the shit with my mom. Like my mom and I have had a weird relationship, and I'm just like realizing that a lot of things that I was like very quick to forgive her for were really just like me trying to get her approval. And a lot of this came after my dad died. But what I kind of started to realize about death and grief is, if you imagine I imagine me and my dad as like two people in a temple, like a Buddhist temple or something. And the thing is, like, we always go, well, if somebody dies, they left us. But like, what if actually what happened was you were both in this temple and you left because you learned all of the lessons that you were meant to learn from that person? And can you actually walk away with a full cup and trust that they're still there waiting for you to come back? And like someday you will, because our souls travel. If you believe in past lives and parallel lives, like our soul family travels together, and you'll always find each other again. But maybe in this life, this was all you were meant to learn from that person. And now can you take that and build upon it? And you know, and I feel I always sense a lot of pain from people around like, I don't know why I like got so fucked up by my mom, or I don't know why I got so like, you know, so many things from my parents. And it's like, imagine our like the generation, first of all, if you're anywhere between like 32 and like 40, you have Mars in Scorpio or I mean Pluto in Scorpio. Sorry, you have Pluto in Scorpio, and it's a generational planet. And Pluto in Scorpio is literally Scorpio is the sign of transformation and death and rebirth. Pluto is the planet of transformation, death, and rebirth. So like our generation, we're like our karma, our dharma in this life is to truly undo and unlearn patterns so we can shift the paradigm. Like that's like why we're here. That's literally why we're here. Um, so that's why like everybody that's our age is like doing all of this work. It's like, it's literally what we're here to do, but expecting our parents to have done the same work. It's like expecting DOS to be iOS. Like DOS could never be iOS. iOS, like it's like, you know, your Dell computer from like 2002 compared to your iPhone now. Like the Dell could never, but it wasn't meant to. And the iOS wouldn't exist if DOS didn't. So we really are here to stand on every generation that came before us, and like we're our mother's daughters and our grandmother's daughters and all these things. Um and I think really honoring that and really being able to tap into that has been really helpful for me healing from losing my dad, because I'm like, oh, I actually did learn everything I was meant to learn from my dad. And then I went down my dad's like human design and his astrology after he died, and I was like, whoa, like my dad was like so in his design. My dad's was a triple Gemini, sun, moon, and rising Gemini. Wild.
I was muted. I agree. And I think there's so much stuff out there right now in inner child work. And I think it's honoring the fact that it was all perfect. Like we needed certain wounding or certain needs not met or whatever in order to activate certain things within us.
Totally.
And even to bring it back to what you're saying is going on right now, where our biggest wounds are getting shown. Okay, but what if we needed to learn those things? Because you come here, and like you said, soul family, soul path, you come here, choose these things that you
With a contract.
know, yes, are going to help you. And so even for me, noticing, oh my God, I'm reliving my parents' relationship pattern in my marriage. Holy shit, if I don't shift something, I'm going to relive this. I don't want to relive this. Whoa, it's like, had I not had that dynamic, I wouldn't have called that thing in for me to be able to like, whoop, shift. This is not what we're doing.
Yep.
And then choose to shift it and break it.
Yeah.
And I feel like you said, the 32 to 40, a lot of us are here to shift and break generational patterns. And the only way for us to do that was to kind of live their experience, to know it, feel it, and then be able to like, whoa, we're choosing differently.
Yeah.
And then you shift so much. And like you just said, with the moms and the grandmas and the grandmas and the great grandmas, like we're here on purpose to help end things that are no longer serving us and this planet.
Yep.
And find a return. And I don't know, like, I think there's a bunch of numbers and years and stuff of like, we're returning to the feminine after we were in the masculine for so long.
Yep.
And returning to our hearts is part of that. And when you do the healing work, you return to your heart. When you're in your heart, we have a different planet. We impact people differently.
Yeah.
A lot of these issues we see right now with the separation and the patriarchy and all that stuff, like you don't need to be oppressed by it. It's understanding like, no, you have the power. Now you know those things exist.
Yeah.
Call it back in by being, even for men too, connecting to your own feminine within you.
Right. Well, and each generation is kind of responsible for a different paradigm, right? So like a lot of our grandparents and even some of our parents, like they were spiritual architects of like a 3D paradigm, which like the 3D paradigm was needed when it happened because like we needed boxes, we needed rules, we needed some structure, we needed some like direction, like we needed that as like a consciousness, right? And then we no longer need as much of that. So our generation is really this kind of these spiritual architects of this new 4D, 5D paradigm where like we all do have different truth, but it's all within the understanding that we're all connected to the same divine truth. So it's like the way that I look at like what our generation is here to bring the collective to is like, if you're sprinting a race, I'm running a race, somebody else can be walking and jogging. All of that's fine because like the goal is to get to the finish line. And that finish line is like that expanded consciousness that we're all moving toward, right? And some people call it a great awakening. Some people call it the second coming of Christ. Some people call it whatever. But like at the end of the day, it's expanding consciousness. Like that's what we're moving toward. And it doesn't really matter if you're walking, I'm running, she's jogging. whatever, as long as we're moving forward. But what really gets in the way is we get distracted. And then it's like the people that are jogging are like, well, why are they running? And why are they rocking? Am I supposed to be running? Am I supposed to be jogging? Like, what am I supposed to be doing? But then they're not moving. And so everybody's then
Mhm.
just like stuck in this like stagnant built up energy. And it's like, what we're really here to do is remind people that like, run your own race, flow
Mhm.
on your own river, because eventually we are all going to get to the same finish line. We are all going to get to the same ocean. We are all going to find the same consciousness, but
Mhm.
not everyone is meant to get there the same way. And it does no good. And we can apply this to business. We can apply this to politics. We can apply this to religion. Like, it does no good if you're just out here being like, this is the way to build your social media following. Like, everybody needs a niche. No, everybody doesn't need a niche. No,
Mhm.
everybody doesn't need to sprint. No, not everybody needs to do, a miracle morning at 5:30 in the morning. Like, not everybody needs that. And
Yes.
the only way you're going to figure that out is if you can get to know yourself deeper, is if you can
Correct.
really, really, really get to know the parts of you that you love the parts of you that you love, and then also like learn to love the parts of you that you don't love, learn to know your shadows. Cause like that's a huge part that people, they don't want to face. And I get it. It's hurts, but it's so worth it.
Okay, I want to end on this because I feel like you just mentioned shadows, and I just recorded a podcast talking about this, but I would love your interpretation of like an example of that because I think people, it's like a one of those words that we're hearing so often, but what does it really mean?
Mm,
And how you just mentioned in that state where we had a lot of the boxes and a lot of the structure and a lot of the order, how it was needed. I want you guys to be able to apply that to your own life because you do need both. I feel like we're being called like return to your feminine, especially as women. You also need your masculine and you also need phases of your life where you do apply structure and boxes and strategy and methods. And that's where for some people, they really need, I'm really good. You're really good at this. Obviously, that's probably how we built our first businesses was like, go, like, and it's in your masculine. Then you need to be like, okay, I'm really good at the strategy and the order and, the sequential and the logical part of it. Now, how can I tap more into the, feminine and all of that kind of stuff in your heart and all the flowy and all of that stuff. But you
mm,
need both. So just like how the world needed that at that time, now we need this because we went so far that way. So it's kind of like the pendulum is swinging. And then it's like, how do you find harmony between both? World, everything happening in the world is a reflection of what's happening within us as human beings. And so if you aren't loving that it's all boxes and structure, the only way to do that is to work on you.
mhm,
You get rid of the boxes and structure, you learn how to do things differently, you build your own business, whatever. Those kind of paradigms are going to fall away because they're no longer necessary. But you
mhm,
have control of that
mhm,
through working on you, controlling what you can do,
mhm,
which is the only thing is working on yourself.
mhm.
And then you also mentioned the shadow. So if you want to just kind of say, um, just an example of that for
Yeah.
people who are listening, like, okay, well, you're saying I need to do this and the hard stuff or work on the shadow, but like, what does that mean? What does that look like? What is that?
Yeah. So okay, so I can combine them both by talking about this. So there, you nailed it. Like, there's this push right now of like everybody needs to be in their feminine. Everyone just needs to find their feminine. And it's like, by the way, she can't be found. She can't be forced. She can't be made to happen. She can't be bought. She can't be gotten. The feminine is truly learning to surrender and receive, like without doing. So if you constantly need to do a bunch of shit to drop into your feminine, that is literally the opposite of how she's meant to exist. That being
You're,
said,
it's a masculine. You're like, but what do I need to do? And I'm like, and
that's
it's not your
masculine.
fault. That was our school. Everything has been
Right.
programmed to do.
Right.
But now it's like, no, it's feeling, it's being, it's
It's
flow.
like,
Like,
actually,
and I
what do you
hate,
need to drop? What do you need
yeah.
to let go of? Actually, is actually how the feminine finds you. But also, the feminine is meant to lead, right? This new paradigm is led by this divine feminine energy of receivership and surrender and peace, but also like full spectrum of emotions. She cannot do that without the support of divine masculine structure and strategy. So if we apply this to business, I have my business is feminine as like I have the most feminine business, but that is because it is supported by the best strategy, the best structure, the best systems that could ever exist. So I can actually be in my receivership because my business is supported in a very masculine way, right? Like that's actually harmony between these two things. And what that looked like in terms of my shadows was so quick little story. When I was like 14, my mom kicked me out of the house. I was a very good kid. I was like straight A student. Like I was not out partying or anything, but I was sassy and I had a mouth and I had a very, very strict understanding of what I was going to do in this life. That butted heads with my mom a lot. She came with her own trauma. It is what it is. She kicked me out at 14. I came home from school one day. All my clothes were out on the grass in trash bags. She called my dad and said, "You need to come get her. She doesn't live here anymore." I forgave very quickly, but what I did by forgiving without actually like being like, wow, actually that was not okay. Like actually like there was a lot of problems with that. What that did is it made me very avoidant. And so I grew up with like a very avoidant attachment style of like, I got it. I'll handle everything. Don't worry. I'll do it all. Listen, it works great in business. Those of us with avoidant attachment, firstborn daughter syndrome, I call it. Like those of us, it works great in business. I'm a shark in business until I wasn't. And what I realized when the shadow really came to the head was I had a business that was bringing in at least 500,000 a year. And I was trying to do it all myself. And I was tired and I was exhausted and I was frustrated all the time, which as a generator, my out of alignment sign is frustration. And it was my shadow. My shadow was there being like, hey, are we going to heal this? Or are we going to keep going down this road because it's not sustainable? And some people are like, wow, you were making 500,000 a year. Yeah. But remember, I have a second house stellium. So making money is very easy for me. It's going to be easy to make whether it's coming in an aligned way or not. It's going to be easy for me to make. But do I want it to feel like this? No. So facing the shadow for me meant learning to trust people. It meant actually, instead of like trying to hold my arms up, like parting the Red Seas like Moses and like my arms getting tired, it actually just meant me being like, okay, I'm going to let this fall the way it's going to. And I'm going to hire a COO and I'm going to hire a team and I'm going to hire people that can like support me. And I'm going to allow myself for probably the first time in my life to be nurtured and to be held. And also in my relationships, how this shadow showed up was like my wife and I, same thing. She met me at work when I was like big, shiny, wee, like soul cycle instructor, quite literally on a podium teaching class, right? Like this is who I was. And what I had to realize was like, oh my gosh, I've become this person at home. I got it. I'll take care of us. Don't worry. I'm the man. I'm the man. I'm the man. I'm the man, whatever. And facing the shadow meant I had to have a very tough conversation with my wife and be like, look, who you met at work is not who I'm going to be at home anymore. At home, I need to be baby girl. I need you to take care of things. I need to not be making decisions. I can't be finishing work where I have to be the boss and then go into the kitchen and be asked what I want to have for dinner. Like these are things that were very uncomfortable for me to release. But that's an example of healing the shadow is like when these things come up, you have to start to make different choices, no matter how uncomfortable it is at the beginning. It's coming up because it's here to release. And to wrap it all up with a bow, it's probably coming up right now because astrologically, we are literally being forced to look at these things. And you have a choice with this full moon. Are you going to finally face it and do the uncomfortable thing for a little period of time to eventually have that full body yes that we all want? Or are we going to keep forcing this feminine energy when actually we're not in it at all? That's like the perfect example of how it can all tie together.
That hit me kind of when you said learning to trust people, because I mean, in my business, of course, I trust people. There's other people I allowed to lead or do calls or do things like that. One second. Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, she's dressed up as a pig. Right. But even in my personal business right now, I'm like, I know I need to hire a way better assistant to help structure things so that I'm not doing it all. And I think so many people do this where because you were like, I got it. We had no choice to do that and be very independent growing up. To think about hiring people and kind of like outsourcing, it's not usually about the money. It's like trusting that person to do it because you've always just done it all. Yeah. And when you do it, you know it's right and it's good. Right. And so to trust that somebody else is going to take care of it. Right. And then also, who are you when you're not busy 24/7? And you probably had to do that where it's like, no, but I do it all because I'm the best. And like the external validation, the needing to be needed. A lot of us that build businesses love it. It's like a high. You're like, oh, they need me. And
we're addicted to it.
You don't consciously know that you're thinking this, but like you'll see it, I'm sure. People who are leaders and like they love that they're needed. They love that they're busy 24/7. And that can be a productive way of an addiction that you're running from having to face any of your shit.
Mm-hmm.
And also eventually it can surface where you're like, oh shit, like I did want to be needed 24/7. And now that I'm not needed, this happened to me. I built my business. I was busy. I could wake up and get on a call or do a text message or whatever. I could be busy all day long. When I wasn't busy is when I started noticing, oh shit, my relationship's all jacked up. Oh shit, I don't think I'm happy. Oh shit, like I have all this pain in my body. All this stuff started showing up because I finally was not chronically busy.
Right.
And so then it's kind of scary because now who are you without needing to be needed 24/7? Who are you if all the people in your business would be totally fine without you?
Mm-hmm.
Who are you when you don't need to, be productive? It's You're unraveling a whole part of you that could be your literal identity up until this point. And so
Right.
it is powerful. And I think that is the part of the shadow where you're able to self-reflect and go, oh crap, I really like that validation. Oh crap, I really like when people are messaging me all day and needing me. And then now I'm having no messages. It's like, am I not worthy? Am I not, like, what shows up when
It shows
the
up.
opposite is there? Because
Yeah.
that's likely the shadow.
It
And
is
it's just,
that's the shadow, and it's the most beautiful
Mhm.
thing you can recognize because like you said, who are you without it? Like it goes and I mean, if you look at your cortisol levels, like I'm sure a lot of firstborn daughters before we start doing this work, if you go get your blood work done, guaranteed you have the cortisol levels of a cave
ooh,
woman
should I go
running
do
from a
that and
panther.
see if mine are still super high? I bet they are.
I just
We would have,
I
yeah.
just got mine redone and she was like, your hormone and your cortisol levels are like really, really great. Like you're so calm. And I was like, if you would have checked them
2
2
years
years
ago?
ago,
Yeah.
that would not have been the case, girl.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's it. It's just being willing and it's being willing to and the reason why we say addiction is because it's like while all this is happening, like your body really likes the feeling it gets when it gets that
Mhm.
cortisol release, when it gets that adrenaline release, and it's the same reason why people have a hard time getting off of drugs because your
Yeah.
body is physically addicted to that feeling. So yes, it's going to
Mhm.
be uncomfortable at first, but what's the bigger picture here? For me, the bigger picture is peace and freedom for me and my family. Like that's it. And so, does staying in this shadow and staying in this pattern move me closer or farther away from that? If the answer is farther away, then I'm going to do whatever needs to happen to make it not so. And yeah, it's definitely something you get better at. I
Mhm.
think. I think the more you do it, you get to the point. Like I say now, I'm like I eat my blind spots for breakfast now. Like the
Yeah.
second I feel a trigger, I'm like, oop, nope. What's that? Why am I feeling? What is that? Because triggers
You have
triggers are
to.
the most beautiful thing. Like we all get
Mhm.
so weird about like this whole movement around like trigger
Oh,
warning.
I'm triggered. I'm triggered.
Like
Yeah.
being triggered, y'all, is the best thing that could ever happen to you because it is quite literally your intuition being like, yo, something's out of alignment. Let's heal. Let's fix this. If you weren't getting triggered, then you're not growing. You can't grow if you're not triggered. Like that's it. If you're
Mhm.
not jealous, jealousy is literally your intuition being like, I want that. So like pay
Mhm.
attention to these feelings of triggers, pay attention to the feeling of jealousy and like be so grateful for them because it's literally your intuition speaking to you. It's literally like your whatever God source, I call it Sky Daddy. It's literally
Yeah.
Sky Daddy being like, hey, are we doing this? Do you want this? Let's go. Let's go get it.
And you're so right. And we can end with that. Like, I think the trigger part, I never put a trigger warning. People have said to me before, oh, you mentioned sexual abuse. I'm like, yeah. And if it's triggering you, like, probably have some shit you need to look at. And I'm not going to mute what I'm talking
Nope.
about because me talking about it might bring awareness for you. And I'm
Yep.
sorry if you don't want to deal with it yet. But
Right.
like, if it's triggering you, it's right there. It's
Right.
right there. And I think if you can have that self awareness to always go, ooh, okay, this feels really uncomfortable in me, and you get better at this as you learn to feel. Obviously, when I wasn't good at feeling and I thought I have to be so secure and stable and positive and everything's happy, and when I start to feel rage or sadness or uncomfortableness or jealousy, it was like bad. Where now I'm like, okay, let's sit with this for a minute, like, and then once it moves through, where's it coming from?
Yep.
This is a skill you can develop. But when you do that, like recently, even in different phases of my life where I'm like, oh, weird, this is making me feel super freaking anxious. Okay, what's that about? Is it really me or is it the other person? And this is where you get to question the dynamic of, is it really within you or is this person actually unsafe for you and your body? And you're like, okay, we just need to create space.
Right.
And just noticing how you act in those moments where you are triggered. And do you make it about everyone else? like, oh, this person did this and this person made me mad, and then you're fighting online? Or can you go, okay, these feelings are coming up in me. What about this just mirrored to me something that's going on within me? Because
Within me.
that's all it's doing. And you can apply this in your partnership, your business, your anything.
Right.
Before you go react to the other person, which you learn obviously through growth too. If you're being reactive, I'm like, that's super immature. It's like, it's basically like your toddler in you, right?
You're
So you
spiritual
should go,
bypassing. You're just bypassing
totally.
yourself spiritually. Like, I'm unwilling to face this. So
Mhm.
instead, I'm going to get angry
At
at
you.
this person. Yeah. But it's like
So
when you can learn to face it, like it really is the definition of freedom. And it's quite literally it's coming home to yourself, and it's becoming
mhm,
so in integrity, because like at the end of the day, like I always like to end on this, like at the end of the day, you are a piece of dust that is literally on a floating rock in the middle of space in a very small portion of the universe. And like, that is so insignificant and equally as miraculous. So like,
mhm,
take the pressure off of yourself, and like, it's not that serious,
mhm.
and it doesn't have to be that serious, but we like make everything so serious, and it's
Correct.
like, it doesn't have to be.
Doesn't have to be. So good. Where can people find you?
You can come
Instagram?
to Instagram, Danielle _ on the daily. DanielleMcCleerey.com is my website. All my offers are there. I do human design readings. I do
Mhm.
private coaching. I have group programs. I got everything. I have a
Everything.
podcast. It's called On the Daily.
Love.
Yeah.
I'll link it
Actually,
all.
it's funny. You talked about reflection. Like my episode, I think last week was like all about the law of reflection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Learn about the universal laws. If I
Yeah.
can tell you anything, like look up your human design and learn about the universal laws, because it'll change your life.
Yeah. And it'll give you such a deeper understanding, and you'll be like, oh, I kind of like, you'll, and I think what's cool is it affirms what you likely kind of already have a knowing of, but it
Oh yeah.
makes it okay to feel like, oh, okay, there's like substance to this. It's
Oh
not
yeah.
just me making it up. This
Yeah.
is really who I am, and this is really how the universe works.
Oh,
It's so
I say that all
beautiful.
the time. I'm like, I don't think I actually teach anyone anything, because this is
Yeah.
all in us. I am really good at getting you to remember what you already
Mhm.
know, like what you've forgotten and put away in a closet. Like, I'm like, people pay me to remind them of who they are. Like, that's
But
it.
you need it, because so much of what we get outside of it has been stuff that's not really doesn't resonate, and it isn't the truth. And so when you have someone kind of affirm truth to you, like, like it's just, it resonates so deeply. And then it gives you the permission you needed to
Right.
just move toward that thing, which I think is so amazing.
Right. Oh, well, thank you
Thank
for
you so
having
much.
me. This was so great.
I know. I feel like we could dive into 9 million topics. So
I
this
know.
was
I
so
feel like
good.
we need, I was just had like had a download. I was like, we should do like a series where like every week we
Yes,
talk about something different.
we totally could, because I'm like, there's so many topics here we could dive way deeper into.
Yeah.
Um,
We could do like a
but I,
private podcast, like subscription situation. And if people really want to
ooh,
go, you want to get real witchy and woo woo with us, like we could go
yes.
deep.
That could be fun.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, one last question for you. With your downloads, do you still think I'm supposed to move to Texas?
Yeah, I do. I keep thinking that, like, I just keep waiting.
Yeah,
Every time I like go to your page or like I see your stuff pop up, I'm like, one of these days she's going to be like, I live
I'm
in
moving to
Austin.
Texas. I know. It's so funny,
Your
right?
aura changes when you're here. Like I notice auras, and like your light is different in Texas than it is anywhere else. Like your light is big by the beach too. Like I notice when you're near the ocean, your aura turns on, but you
Hmm.
have like a different aura when you're in Texas. And obviously when you're here, you're usually here for like some sort of
Good thing.
expansion,
Yeah.
but you
Yeah.
definitely, your aura changes when you're here.
I know. And I mean, if you guys know, what's that called where you can look up your astro chart or whatever? What's it called?
Yeah, your
Astrograph?
astrocartography lines.
Okay. Like, because for me, and this is just end on this, and then we really need to go. He's like waiting. He's like, "Are you done yet?" But when I looked mine up, like I have lines through Texas, a bunch of them, and
Yeah.
I have nothing here where I am. And so I know this is just a season of my life to be here,
Yeah.
but I won't be here forever. And I feel it on a soul level that I'm like, I'm not as bright and powerful and magnetic, but I call this my hermit space. So it's like where I get to just hermit,
Yeah.
and I have nothing pulling me even out of my house.
Yeah.
And so it's been great for like introspection and creativity and all that. But me being the most alive version of me is not here.
Are
And I
you
know that.
in Canada right now?
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, I have no lines running through Texas. I had like Pluto running through LA. So it was like a lot of just like death and rebirth constantly. So I needed to
Mm,
get away from that. I like personally, I'm in a season of my life too where I like
Yeah.
not living on any lines because it's really
Yeah.
giving me this like peace that I need. But I do travel a lot. So it's like when I travel, like I have a lot of lines through Italy. So when I was just in Italy for 2 weeks, like I was on,
Mhm.
but then I needed to come back to my cave and be back in
Yeah.
my space. So like not everybody likes to live on lines, but there are
I'm
seasons in
so
your
in.
life where you do want to live on lines.
Mhm. Yeah. I love
Anyway.
it. Thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time so much. And
Thanks
I'll
for
make sure to
having me.
link everything so people know where to find you.
Yeah. Love ya.
Thank you. Love
Bye.
you. Bye.